What's up, everybody? Metal Dave, along with my co-host Jason McMaster, bringing you another episode of the Talk Louder podcast. Today, we are joined by heavy metal author Jeff Wagner. Jeff spent a number of years as an editor at Metal Maniacs magazine. He's written a number of books. His specialty sort of steers towards prog metal, I guess. He wrote a great book on Fate's Warning. He wrote a book on the genre of prog metal called
Mean Deviation, 40 Years of Progressive Metal.
I Knew I Could Count on You.
Mm-hmm.
He also wrote a book on Peter Steele from Typo Negative. And we're here today to talk to him about his latest creation, a long-awaited, at least in my opinion, the biography of Voivod. And if there's anybody that's qualified to write a book on Voivod, it's got to be Jeff Wagner. The guy does such great work. He's very thorough, he's very knowledgeable, and he always gets the best voices to speak in his books. The book on Voivod is called Always Moving, The Strange Multiverse of Voivod. He's got the band members' participation in the book. He's got Voivod peers, recording studio producer type people, just a lot of people that were in the Voivod orbit chime in and lend their voice to this story. And it's just such a great story because Voivod is such a unique and interesting band. If you're a fan, you already know that. If you're not a fan, you might find this really compelling. I think Jeff is an amazing writer.
Yeah, I was going to say, I love Jeff's writing, and, he gives you his perspective as a super fan. He knows exactly what he's talking about. There is not going to be any untruths in the book. And, he does have what I'll use his description, plenty of talking heads. He's letting the band tell how they recall everything that he's talking about pertaining to each chapter. You just made a great point. I feel like people who like extreme music, art music, progressive music, I feel like Voivod has always had something for you, whether you know about Voivod or not. And I'm hoping that you'll give at least the book a chance, or if you watch this episode, you'll go listen to some Voivod and go down a rabbit hole that'll make you want to buy this book, because I feel like the retrospect, the story, the movie and words that you would probably end up soaking all in if you are, like I said, if you like weirdo music or weirdo metal or just crazy art for the sake of it being out of this world, because Voivod is definitely out of this world.
Right.
So,
right. They're a very unique band,
yeah.
and there hasn't been a million books written about them. And Jeff comes from such a place of authority. What I've found interesting is Voivod is one of those really, really unique bands, but there's not a lot of information about them. I mean, you can go out on the internet these days and Google them and whatnot, but it's really interesting hearing the backstory behind all those oddball records. And as we said during the show, some of the records, some of them are a little easier on the ears than others. Some of them are full on abrasive. They never gave you the same thing twice. And I like hearing how that came to be by the people that were there. And that's what you get in this book.
Well, just hearing the band describe what it is they were trying to say and do during those years has got to be just like jaw-dropping.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Jeff has taken orders for the book now. You can order it on radicalresearch.org/Voivod. Again, the title is Always Moving, The Strange Multiverse of Voivod. And our guest today is author Jeff Wagner to tell us all about it today on the Talk Louder podcast. Yeah, thanks for joining us, Jeff. And I'd like to just thank, on behalf of all the Voivod fans around the world, thank you for doing this book, man. It's I don't know that there is another Voivod book out there. If there is, I haven't read it. And the advanced copy that you sent us, I must confess, I've only had it for a few days and I'm only up to the Nothing Face record. But it's already spectacular. It's a must-read book. I'm loving it. So
Awesome. Well, good to hear that. Good to hear that. Let me say that this is not the first Voivod book. There was one called Worlds Away by Martin Popoff that came out in hardback about 15 years ago now, but it was more of a survey of Away's art.
Right.
Away, the drummer, as we all know, had been wanting to do a book to preview or showcase his artwork for a while, and I think Martin took that on, and so it was kind of really the main thread was the artwork, and the sub thread was just a little bit of Voivod history. But it really was never meant to serve, I don't think, as a Voivod history. So there was actually a book, and then I've heard of. I just today got an email from the management of Voivod that a 78-page AI-generated book was being offered on Amazon. And it has this cover of just a generic Voivod font and a guy playing guitar who's not even in Voivod. I mean, and he's like, we're going to contact Amazon, and I don't know, I guess try to get it taken down or something, but it's kind of hilarious, and I don't know if you'll let me send you guys the cover to I'll just send it to you guys privately. It's hilarious.
Okay.
But that's happening now. I guess maybe because somebody out there, AI knows that there's a real Voivod book coming out. They make their own crappy 78-page version. It's just weird, man. It's just,
a friend of mine bought me a book that he didn't know much about. He saw it on Amazon, thought I'd be interested in it. And it was actually supposed to be a biography on Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue. And I looked at the cover alone. I could tell the guy on the cover was not Nikki Sixx. And then there was no information about the author or Nikki or anything. And then as I was reading it, I realized it was basically verbatim paragraphs from the Heroin Diaries, an actual authorized book put out by Nikki. So anyway, I think it's another AI generated something or other, but it was not valid, and I saw through it right away. But anyway, I'm glad you made the distinction. Martin Popoff did indeed do a book, but it was more about the artwork of Drummer Away. I think what I'm saying here is, to my knowledge, what you're presenting is the first real biography of Voivod.
Well, and Jeff is flesh and blood. He's not a robot. He's not. Jeff is a real.
I don't think so. Yeah, for sure. It is the first real biography, I guess, and it's obviously just having the support of the band helps make it legitimate in some way. Not that biographies that don't have support of a band or whatever are illegitimate. It's just certainly more helpful to get into any avenue I need to talk to the source and ask questions and
So how did you accomplish that? Because that is and in the early pages of the book, you almost kind of you almost give yourself a little less credit by saying, I approach this in sort of the narrative approach where people it's an oral history basically. So it's all the key players talking rather than you writing every word as a story, so to speak. And you kind of almost discredited yourself for taking that approach, but I think it's great when the people that were there are speaking their story firsthand. So how did you go about getting the cooperation of all those people? This had to be something that took a lot of effort.
It did take a lot of effort, although to get them to the band to agree to do a book was quite easy, because they've known about me as a writer and journalist, and even I worked as a product manager for The Wake, their album of several years ago when I was at Century Media. So they're very familiar with me. They hired me to write the Morgoth Tales liner notes. That's their 40th anniversary album of re-recordings of things through the career with the latest lineup. So, they know I'm a super fan, and they know I'm crazy about them, and I think they felt the time was right for their book. And so that was easy. That was the easy part. The hard part was simply taking all these interviews, doing all the interviews, all the time it takes, hours and hours and hours, days and days and days and days of work and interviews and follow-up interviews. And then, you have to transcribe, which at the time I wasn't even using an auto transcriber. I kind of was doing it myself, and then I got overloaded and hired somebody else. And so then I'm left with a mountain of quotes. Yeah. I also reached out, to, as you read, I'm reaching out to Harris Johns, a producer, Glenn Robinson, the producer, ex-managers, people around the band. And then I cast out even further to like people like Michael from Opeth and Paul from Cynic and Tommy from The Accused, and all these people that I knew were fans of Voivod who are also hears, or, in the case of somebody like Grutla from Enslaved, kind of the next generation of musicians who grew up listening to and being influenced by Voivod. So there's a mountain of people to bring in. And you didn't really ask it, but I'll tell you why I kind of downplayed my role as an author in the oral history. And that's because I think that a lot of times oral histories are kind of the lazy way out. Like, I'm just going to like cut and paste all these quotes. I don't have to do much, says the author or the narrator. What I wanted to do was create a very cogent and compelling narrative of my own. And that's all the stuff you see in italics throughout the book. And it's a lot.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to give the quotes just more highlight because I had so many talking heads. And also it was a new challenge for me. I'd never done an oral history book. And I've read some that I do feel were kind of lazy. And then I've read some that were compelling as hell. Mm-hmm. The one I cite in my intro is about Saturday Night Live. It's one that was written 20 years ago about, the history of Saturday Night Live at the time. But I thought it was so compelling to get the oral history view and then the narrative view of the authors as well. So that's kind of why I chose to go that route.
That's the word I was looking for, downplay. But, and as you said, I will say that there's a huge amount of your voice in this book. So those paragraphs that are in italics where you're doing the talking, you really do spend a lot of time setting the stage for the upcoming quotes and then give the players, not just the band members, but as you said, the producers, et cetera, their peers, plenty of room to talk. And I think you did a really great job. It's very effective. It makes it interesting. It flows, and it doesn't come across as a cut and paste. I think it's all very sequential, and I love it, man. I told Jason, I hope I don't come across as kissing your ass, but man, you've done a hell of a job with this book, and I'm not even halfway through it. So
thank you. No, thank you. It's good to hear at this early stage. I've talked to a few people now that have advances and are starting to, do interviews or reviews or whatever. And so I haven't gotten a lot of feedback from people kind of outside my little bubble. And it's great to hear, man. I kind of consider you guys in my bubble, but you know what I mean? Like just people kind of out there in the real world, finally getting a hold of it. Cause that's the thing. I think, Jason, obviously making music, he knows what it's about to like hold on to something musically. You have it inside your little group, and then suddenly it's out in the public and you can't do anything about it. It's like, I hope people like it, or I hope this is taken in the spirit with which it was created,
Right.
And you just, it's kind of like that, you let your wild one free and see what happens. Yeah. So, but I'm very happy with
it's the universe, and you can't control the universe. And if you're an artist who shares their art, and that's part of the love and passion of what it is we do as artists is, why would you want to just, hoard it all and just, make something and just put it in the corner and make another one, and you're going to just drown yourself. So the best thing to do is share art. It's like you gotta share your art. I feel like you have to, because that's how your art kind of grows and does its job. Right.
Yeah.
And it's important. I was going to say, I feel like, the way you're describing the flow of this book might not be exactly the same, but the flow of previous works where you've kind of some of your other books I feel like are written similar in this way, where you're kind of setting up. You talk first, and then they talk, and then the subject, the talking heads come in after. I feel like you've done that before.
I have, and it's fun. It's, you know, I'm glad you're pointing out that fine line too, because for me, I'm just like a super fan, I guess you could call me a super fan, but at the core, I'm just a fan. But I have a lot to say, and I've spent a shit ton of time in front of the stereo, and I've, you know, listened to how many millions of albums in my life. Like, I feel like I've at least got valid opinions and viewpoints that I want to get across. It's not really even so much an agenda, but if I'm trying to talk about progressive metal, as I did in my first book, or, you know, talk about how I view Peter Steele in that book, or the Fates Warning career, like, I'm only coming at it from really my experience as a fan, you know, having taken these artists into my DNA forever. And I that's a sacred thing to me, but I spit it back out and try to share that with other people and get other people enthused. And one thing I'm really happy about is whether it's my podcast or my writing or whatever it is I do, I have a lot of people that come to me and say, I got into this because of you, or I bought a whole discography of Anacrusis because of you, or whatever it was, you know. Exactly. I love that, because that's what I'm trying to do. And I think that's why I try to put maybe a little bit more of my voice in it than maybe a more traditional author who might kind of lay back and not feel that that's their role to put their voice in, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's just a choice, I guess.
The last time we had you on the show, you were kind enough to send us the Peter Steele book that you did, and the Fates Warning book. And this is going to sound like blasphemy to our audience, but I'm one of those guys that I never really listened to Fates Warning. I knew who they were. I knew they had a great deal, tremendous amount of respect in the metal community and among their peers as musicians. I know some of their albums are considered classics. I just never got into them, and I don't know why. I read your book, and your book was the word you use is compelling. I loved that story so much so that I started exploring their music, and I got into the music, but it was because your book made them sound so interesting to me, on top of what I already knew. But to hear somebody sort of explain it and then hear the players tell their story also in their own voice, that's what I think you do really well. You do inject yourself into the story, but you're such an effective writer that your voice matters as much as, in this case, Blackie or Away or whatever. You are a voice in this story, and your voice carries a great deal of credibility, and you use it well. And a band like Voivod, the adjectives it seems like you almost run out of adjectives because they are so quirky and weird and whatever. And you really do a great job in describing their music, because their music is not easily described. And like I said, I'm up to the Nothing Face record, and you've never run out of very specific adjectives that are very well suited for what you're talking about. So,
well, thank you. I'll take that even more as a compliment, because, and this is not bragging, it's just simply my process. I don't use a thesaurus. I don't look up words online. I mean, obviously that's so easy these days. Certainly I could have leaned on Chat GPT or whatever, but I don't even have an account. I try to just come up with stuff that I might, if I was sitting around with friends like you guys, or my buddy Hunter, who I do the podcast with, like, if we were just talking about this stuff, like, well, how would I describe it? How would I really kind of bring it? You know, because music's hard to describe, and sometimes I think it's kind of pointless. You know, I mean, it's ironic that I'm saying that as a music writer, but I don't know. It's tough. It is tough to find the words, but I think I'm just so enthusiastic, and this is all I really do and think about. Somehow I come up with them.
I think that it's an art form. Too bad you can't get paid for it, maybe, but you know, coming up with these little zingers, and you're just trying to describe how you feel and what kind of thing that's making you feel this way, and then you're just oversharing, you know, within a book or this any kind of medium. It's back to, we just went full circle. It's like writing a song, and then, like, you know, when it's done, you share it, and it's like you know, you have to tell someone that you love something eventually.
Yeah.
You can't just not tell someone that you're really obsessed with something when it's eating you from the inside. Well, that's exactly what you do, Jeff. It's what you're doing when you care enough about something to become part of the DNA of the subject matter. So, I mean, all of the things that you describe. I mean, the Watchtower thing, bonkers anxiety metal. I mean, that kind of covers all of the bases on what people are going to walk into.
Right, sure.
And it even reminds me of when we were kids and like Billy White had to come up with a way to sell. Well, we can't say, oh, it's a heavy metal party or we're a rock band. You can't just use those words to describe what it is that people that you're trying to get. Well, let me say, oh, are you guys in a rock and roll band? Let's see, Watchtower. Is that a rock and roll band? You have to come up with a way to describe it to them to make it attractive or to tell them exactly what it is somehow. Yeah. So they'll know, ooh, that sounds painful. I'm not coming to see your band. And that's fine. You want that. So I think that you're nailing the shit out of that in all of your work. In all of your work. Yeah, man.
Did I understand that you might have had less cooperation from Blackie than the other members of the band? Or is he working on his own book, or I don't know if you can talk. His voice is in the book very much so. So can you talk on that a little bit?
Yeah, I can explain that. Like, he's had a rift with the other guys since he left the second and final time in 2000, I'll say 14, I think it was. And he's done some things that I think are a little questionable legally in terms of releasing bootlegs with the Voivod name and selling them. I don't really get into that in the book so much. I let others speak for me about him. I did approach him, however, and I told the guys in the band, I told their management, like, I'm going to approach Blackie. If he agrees to talk, I'm going to talk to him. And I have to put his voice in. They all understood that, like, okay, it's your book, it's your thing. We can't say no. So I approached him and he declined, and he said he was writing his own book. And just as a little, I want to get back to that, but as a little side tangent, I remember approaching the guys in Typo Negative when I did the Peter Steele book, and I was kind of faced with this dilemma of, do I talk to the family or the band? Because at the time, it seemed like I would not get both. It had to be one or the other, just because of history, let's say.
Right. Okay.
And then Johnny and Kenny told me they were going to write their own book. Well, that was 11 years ago. So
yeah,
whether or not Blackie writes his own book, I'll be the first one in line to read it. I have a lot of respect for him as a bass player and the character and role that he played in Voivod. I mean, absolutely one of the Fab Four of Voivod. I mean, there's no doubt about it. That was a band in their original lineup that was like Kiss or Beatles in their original lineups, where all four guys gave equally. You couldn't imagine that thing coming together without either one of those people. And Blackie was one of those
100%,
components.
100%.
Yeah. So he declined. I figured he might, but I told him that, I'm going to quote him from a popular interview that went around by Greg Godin years ago. And I cite that in the endnotes. And as long as you cite where your source is in a biography, you can use quotes. You don't need legal permission as long as it's cited. You certainly would get in trouble if you didn't cite the source.
Yeah.
Potentially trouble anyway. So that's how I got his voice in, but I didn't, he's not there as much as I wish he was. But I also tried to treat it more on a musical level than a bickering level, like what's between them. And when that had to be part of the story, I let James, the manager, talk about that. I let Snake and Away give their views on it. And I wish I could have gotten Blackie's view on it, but again, he declined. So,
right.
And I also wrote something in the intro that I think is important. I really want to mention here. I didn't hear from Blackie for years because this book took a while to gestate. It took a while, by far the longest gestation period of any of my books. But I didn't hear from him for years after he declined, and I just kept going and making the book and doing my thing. And after we had a fire exactly to the day that we're talking 1 year ago, November 21st.
Wow.
That was devastating to my family, killed 4 of our animals. We're still reeling from it, quite honestly. We're still like doing things every day that like we're moving into a new house this week. We're talking to insurance companies still and trying to find builders. Anyhow, really devastating thing. And what happened was about a month after that happened, I got an email from Blackie out of absolutely nowhere, because he hadn't been in touch. And he said, "Hey, I was really sorry for what happened. Really, really sad. I'm a cat lover and I'm really so sad," just really genuine. And from everything I'd heard about him from others, I didn't expect that. And that made me go, shit, do I take all the stuff out that was in the book about him, that others say? And I thought about that some, and then I said, well, I'm just going to say my piece about it in the intro and let the others speak about him. He's still on record as having declined. But it did make me feel like, well, he's a human being after all. You know what I mean? I don't want to slag the guy, drag him through the mud. I'll let others do it for me. But I don't do it actually at all in the book at all.
No, I remember you telling us that there was he was the one that was going to be a little more difficult than the others. But I will say this, and the reason I bring this up is because I want to make this point. So far, like I said, I'm only at a certain point in the book, but I don't feel like his voice is lacking, and I don't feel like the story is incomplete because we're not hearing from him.
Okay, good.
So.
Good.
He's there, and it may not be on the same terms as the others, made themselves available or whatever, but he's very much part of the story, and I think that lends a lot of, it had to be there, honestly. I mean, that.
Sure.
So anyway, I was just curious about that. And one of the things I like also, and this is apparent in the early going of the book, and it's fitting that it is, I think sometimes Voivod is one of those bands that people that get into them are really nerdy. So they kind of know a lot about them. They kind of devour whatever information is out there. But I really thought it was interesting how you and they are telling the story. I feel like their story is so important to realize that they come from basically this isolated, cold, barren factory, like this. They are definitely not Van Halen. They're not coming from the beaches and the bikinis and everything's a party. And I think that's very important. And it obviously played into their music and their sound. And,
big time.
It's a big ingredient. So again, I like the way you set the stage and made that, apparent right up front, because then everything that follows makes more sense. And it's really, you talk about humble beginnings, man. I mean, I can't even after I read it, I can't imagine living there. It just sounds like some foreign, desolate, icy sort of, something you read about in a sci-fi movie, which is fitting, I suppose.
Yeah, I think Jean Pierre in the 70s was probably maybe at its lowest in terms of environment and kind of maybe bleakness. I understand that because since it's merged with a couple cities now, and that's detailed a little bit in the early parts of the story. But yeah, when they were growing up there as kids in the 70s, it was just rancid smells of the factories, smoke, pollution. And, this is a band that became very environmentally aware. One of the first bands that, for me, spoke about that stuff as I was listening in the 80s to things like Killing Technology, albums like that, and all the various songs where they address the environment. They just ended up sounding like a product of their environment, very much the same way Van Halen did. That's a great example. Beach Boys, Beach Boys couldn't have come from Flint, Michigan, probably. Nothing against Flint, but that's not blue collar music. Not every band sounds like their origin. Sometimes it's a way to escape that origin. And I think Voivod kind of did both things. I think they reflected their origins in the factory town, and then I think when they moved to Montreal, right before the second album, they became a little more cosmopolitan, both in their listening and in their experiences and as people and human beings growing into adults. And their music expanded as well. It's kind of a mirror of that as well. So I think they're one of the great parts of the Voivod story. And I think there are many interesting parts of the story. But one of the great parts is, to me, the growth of them as human beings and artists, and then just watching where their music goes. Like you put War and Pain down over here from 84 and then Angel Rat from 91. And you're hard pressed to like really recognize that as the same band. I mean, it's remarkable. Like the leaps they made. It's Rush like, where you take Rush's first album, then you get up to like Permanent Waves just a handful of years later. It's incredible. The leaps and bounds they made.
I'm one of those guys that and I love this because it's explained. One of the things about reading the book is I find that I'm not alone. So I'm one of those guys that went out and I had to buy a Voivod record, just had to, because the picture of the band, they were the most metal looking band I'd ever seen.
Sure.
And to this day, that's still true. They are still the baddest ass, most metal looking band I've ever seen. Yeah. And so I bought Roar. That was my first album. And I took it home, and I'm happy to know I'm not alone because there's other voices in your book that say the same thing. I could not stand to listen to it. I thought it was horrible.
You've told me this story before, and I think that it's fucking awesome.
It was unlistenable.
It did its job, Dave. It scared the shit out of you, and it did its job. Yeah.
Look at the album cover. It's not trying to be not trying to make you a friend.
Right. And like others in the book say, I mean, I didn't consider myself a prude by any stretch. I was into Metallica and Slayer and stuff like this, but this was a whole nother animal. And I was like unbelievably harsh, and I just couldn't get my head around it. So there was no way I was going to buy any more Voivod records. And then I went to a buddy's house a couple years later, and he's another metalhead, and he goes, dude, have you heard the new Voivod record? And I was like, why would I buy the new Voivod record? They're terrible. And at the time, it was Dimension Hatros.
Oh, wow.
And he played that for me, and it was just what you said. I was like, wait a minute, is this the same band? Because they grew by leaps and bounds.
Oh, man.
And so that album got me back on board. And then, of course, they followed that with Nothing Face, which I thought was a masterpiece. Yeah. And your book now has me going back. I would have never dared to listen to War and Pain because I figured if that's what came before Roar, then it's got to be even worse than Roar. But people were describing it in your book as having more of a punk metal sound. And I'm very much
it's looser than Roar. Roar is really uptight and really ferocious to the point of kind of just collapsing in on itself. I feel like War and Pain, it's noisy, it's grungy and dirty, but it's got more rock in it. I mean, I hear some Fast Eddie Clarke and Piggy's guitar work. Yeah. Whereas by the time of Roar, they're all pushing the gas pedal like as far as they can go, and it's the one and only real calamitous, chaotic Voivod record. I think the others, as extreme as they are to some ears, I think they're, I don't know. I think War and Pain comes from that Motorhead, Venom tradition. Yeah. It's more accessible because of that. And then Roar was the sort of War and Pain times 100. That's what they were going for too. They were trying to outdo everybody else in the scene. They say in the book that in 85, 86, they were trying to play faster, heavier, more noisy than anybody else on the planet, and that's what came out. And they didn't even stay there. That was Voivod does. Killing Technology was a whole different animal than Roar. Very much different.
I would have never ever in my wildest dreams gone and tried to listen to War and Pain based on my experience with Roar, but because of your book and because of the way I heard it described, the descriptions suited. They're like, because I'm way into punk rock, and the punk metal hybrid when it's good is really good. I love that. And so I'm hearing it described as that more than what I heard with Roar. And I was like, wow, maybe I need to give this a listen. So I have in the past couple weeks, and I'm like, wow, I like War and Pain better than I like Roar.
Now, do you go into like Angel Rat and Outer Limits? Have you explored that stuff yet?
Yeah, those are my favorite. That's my favorite period of Voivod. My favorite period of Voivod is Nothing Face through Outer Limits, and I think Angel Rat on Any Given Day may be my favorite record of theirs. It goes back and forth between Nothing Face and Angel Rat, but I like that slightly more polished, a little more accessible period, where they landed somewhere, between Nothing Face and Outer Limits is kind of my, And I like the outlier stuff to a degree, but I think to me that's the sweet spot for my years anyway.
Fair enough.
And I didn't know, here's another thing I didn't know, but your book educated me, is I didn't realize, is it Killing Technology and Dimension Hatros were basically recorded 6 months apart or something like that? Or
I mean, a little less than a year apart.
But
the interesting thing is they kind of really mesh in terms of when one was recorded but I should say by the time they recorded, they got into Harris Johns' studio in Germany. By the time they recorded Killing Technology, they had pretty much had most of Dimension Hatros written. Like they were really prolific, and they were like just constantly kind of ahead of themselves in a way, so that by the time that they were done with the Killing Technology tour, they were ready to go right in the studio and do Dimension. And that's considering the caliber of material that they're doing at that point, it's pretty impressive. It's to say the least. Yeah.
And your book makes note that Harris Johns, the producer of those two records, upgraded his studio big time for the Dimension record, and that gave him a whole new playground to experiment with.
Yeah, he's talking about like all these old Neumann mics and just all this kind of fun gear that they had to mess around with. There was a lot more of it once they got into the studio for Dimension, because Harris Johns had moved his studio within Berlin and just kind of outfitted it. I think he was making more money at the time, so Skylab could just be a more functional studio, or just a more of a playground for them. And it came at the right time, because they were wanting to do sound effect types things, or things that reflected their love of like Einstürzende Neubauten and some of this German industrial. And he had the gear to allow them to do all that. So.
What I ask this every time we talk to an author. Authors obviously, hopefully, are already credible authorities on their subject matter, but I would imagine when you get into this level of research, there's always some revelations. There's something that you didn't know. Tell us 2 or 3 little side notes that were kind of like aha moments for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was happy that I learned more about what happened with the Eric Forrest era, that trio era they had.
Yeah.
When he landed in the hospital after that horrible, horrible wreck, they were in, I think, Mannheim, Germany, outside of Mannheim, Germany, and he landed in the hospital. He was in a coma, and the result of that came out in the press, in the media, as he's fighting with Voivod, and there was all this like bickering between Voivod and Eric, and it was like a big thing. And there was a lot of like just almost gossipy sort of like media about that. But he dispelled that, and the other guys dispelled that. It was really more insurance companies fighting insurance companies. But somehow, the media made it look saucier. And so I was just glad to like learn that it wasn't a thing between Eric and the other, and Piggy in a way. And I'm trying to think of, I'm sure there are many other revelations. There's one about Chewy, their new guitarist. Well, he's not new, but he's been in there, he's the latest guitarist, and the guy that basically saved Voivod. I'll say that. There's not another human being on the planet that could replace Piggy. But he did, and they went on and they proved that it could be done. And I found out that he, in the book, he had approached Piggy pretty early on about taking guitar lessons. Piggy had no idea who he was. Chewy was just a fanboy, and Piggy kind of blew him off and turned him down. Wow. That was kind of funny. And Chewy even approached the band about playing bass when they were needing a bass player at one point, well before he actually joined the band. And he's like, I'm not a bass player per se, but I can play guitar, so I could probably adapt, and I'd love to join Voivod. So he made an approach, and then they really didn't take it seriously. But I kind of like learning about I didn't know anything about that, like his approaches toward them as a fan. And now that we know the story that he's in the band, that's, it kind of puts it in even more perspective that I like. So that was kind of cool.
That's still getting to join your favorite team kind of a story,
It's it's a Ripper Owens story. He gets to join Judas Priest. It's I think that Guy Arnell from Journey was a big Journey fan as a kid, and now he's in the band. It's like that kind of story. I love that. And you're replacing what Voivod fans thought was an irreplaceable character. And I was as skeptical as any Voivod fan when in that era, thinking that They can't go on without Piggy.
Well,
but they've made it work. They've actually made it work. It's true Voivod. Yeah.
Bands do it. It doesn't seem possible, but bands do it. And sometimes it works out really well.
Yeah. Well, in Voivod's case, I would say it does.
Yeah.
What did you learn about the Jason Newsted era? Any
what I learn?
Revelations there? Or is there anything
I already
interest?
knew just about everything.
Yeah, you did, but is there anything of interest that people like me might not know?
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting that they were working on a double album after they came off of their most prolific touring year in 2003, probably that they've either ever had or had for years. Once Jason came on, they put out that self-titled. They did that tour with Sepultura. Then they hopped onto the Ozfest, and they were incredibly busy. Played a shit ton of shows to a whole ton of people. And after that, Piggy sat down and wrote what he wanted to be a double album. They would have had a double studio album, but it wasn't finished, and the remains of it turned into Couture's and Infinity. But that really probably wasn't the album that they were hoping to present. And I really wish that Jason would have had a chance to be more involved in a proper studio record. And I certainly, I think, like all of us, wish that Piggy would have been able to live and see that through properly. I think we would have gotten a bit more of a progressive record than those records turned out to be, because they're just built from demos. But that was interesting. I didn't actually know that. That was the origin of that material.
You one of the voices in the book is Dave Grohl, and I thought that was interesting. How did you go about getting him to participate in this book?
Well, I didn't. He and Blackie are the two that I have taken quotes from and cited sources.
Okay.
This is an interesting story. I think I can tell it. Why not? Voivod management was trying to get me Dave Grohl, and for one reason or another, like he was too busy doing his thing. Like their drummer died around the time that I was hoping to approach him, and I thought, well, that's not a really good time, so I'll lay off management and not worry about it. And then I started knocking on management's door, like, it's time to get Dave, because I'm about wrapping up, but it's time to get Dave. Let's get him in. And he goes to Voivod shows, or he gets away into Foo Fighters shows when Foo Fighters plays up in Montreal. So it's like, they're copacetic. There's a very much a mutual respect and a friendship there. But Dave Grohl is Dave Grohl, so you have to go through the proper channels. So when I started knocking on the door and telling Voivod's manager, like, look, I need to get Dave Grohl there, he's like, no problem. Like a week later, that whole personal thing came out where he had, I don't even know what you want to call it. I don't.
Yeah, he had a child with another woman or something.
Yeah, it was a big blow up, and
it was a family affair. Yeah,
it was a family affair, and I just thought, nah, this is not my time. I guess I'm not bound to get this guy, because it's just that would not be the right time to approach him. So I decided to go ahead and just take some quotes from a Voivod DVD that was released that had an interview with Dave Grohl talking about his love of Voivod. You can see that on YouTube, but the source is Sam Dunn, who's known for his work with just doing various documentaries. He did that VH1 series. So I took it from that, again, cited it in the end notes, and got a few quotes in from Dave. But everybody else, I guess every other person I talked to directly myself, Piggy's sister, and I mean all the other musicians and all the other bands, all the ex-members. That was all mine.
Right. What are your personal thoughts on the time period that I'm most that I enjoy the most? Nothing Phased Through Outer Limits.
Oh, amazing. All amazing albums. I remember when Angel Rat came out, I took a lot of flack in my friend group at the time, because I was running with 5 or 6 people who had been following them through the years. And I remember, just as excitedly getting that one as I did the others. I came home from the record store. I threw it on that morning. It was a kind of a cold autumn morning. And it just blew me away, because yet again, they were doing something I really didn't expect, or they were taking their music to a place that I really hadn't envisioned that they would or could, and it was really quite a leap. But I connected with it deeply, deeply. I loved how dark it was and how lonely it sounded and how gothic it was, and yet how accessible and rocking. And I mean, it just kind of pushed a lot of buttons for me at the time as a 22-year-old. And so I love that album. I took a lot of flack with my friend group, but what I've found about that album, and this is when you get to the Angel Rat part of the book, you'll see there's a lot of people out there that are like finally finding it, who didn't like it when it came out. Yeah. And I think that's the mark of some great records where they just don't land right away. You need time. You need to be ready for it. So I love Angel Rat. I also love Outer Limits. I think Outer Limits is phenomenal. And Nothing Faces in that, to me, it's in that group of, like, people have asked me what my favorite Voivod album is. I don't have one. I have four. And they're all in a row. It's Killing Technology, Dimension, Nothing Face, and Angel Rat. Those are the four kind of perfect Mount Rushmore Voivod albums for me.
Wow.
I don't think it gets much better than that. But having said that, I like a great deal of their discography. So
yeah. So you mentioned, there were some people in your friends group that maybe didn't appreciate Angel Rat because it was maybe not as thrashy as some of the earlier records. So here's a question. Do you think Voivod would have somehow managed to achieve the same level of success that they have had they continued on the path they were on with the earlier albums? Like, I don't think anybody would have ever expected Slayer to become the world internationally famous, mega huge, successful rock band. Just too abrasive, just too harsh, Yeah. But they did it. So I guess my question to you is, had Voivod stayed in that more thrashy sort of arena, do you think that they might have been able to? Because I still think they're still too weird, but I don't know. And I guess we'll never know. But
yeah, I that's always hard to say, but I don't think they would have had any more success staying with thrash. Let's say they stayed with sort of a Killing Technology mode. Yeah. Because, and Slayer's an anomaly for some reason. Slayer's a total anomaly because, bands like Creator, I don't know, the bands that stuck around and tried to remain thrash into the 90s, it just didn't work. Like there was something like Destruction failed. Creator kind of had some failures and they're in a low point. Celtic Frost, if you will, broke up. Possessed broke up. A lot of these bands either broke up or just couldn't navigate through the 90s. I don't know that Voivod would have been any more successful navigating a thrash sound in the 90s as anybody else. Yeah. So I doubt it. Again, I cite Slayer as an anomaly. I was just curious because they broke through. Voivod immediately struck me as almost too harsh, at least back then. I've grown to appreciate it a little more now. But I just found them to be like super harsh and abrasive. And, people said that about Metallica the first time they heard Whiplash, and people said that about Slayer and Pantera, and some of these bands, somehow they are able to leap that hurdle and still translate into widespread mainstream success.
I think it's a matter of tones. Some people are autumn and winter and some people are summer. And I really feel like the fact that Voivod is one of those bands that created their own audience the entire time. Every time they put out a record, there's like this new audience. Like, you guys have both sort of like confessed to, hearing it for the first time and falling in love with it, or in Dave's case, fucking hating it, like had to figure out later on, like, oh, wait, these guys are magicians and they're going to do something different. It's a new trick every time. Yeah. And you don't know where they're actually going to land. And sometimes, one record they're learning Japanese, and the next record they're learning German, and the next, I feel like there's some kind of color change by choice that a band like that can do. Now, when you say Slayer and that they're an anomaly, the people who like, hey man, you guys like metal? Well, I like Slayer. No, well, do you like, Metallica? No, I like Slayer. Well, Metallica's
Right.
metal, but yeah, you go, not really. I like Slayer. You see what I'm trying to say? So you can't do that with Voivod, because their artistic transformation has happened so many times and will continue to, like, either scare people, bring people in. Some people want that harsh, and so some people want lo-fi, and some people want production.
Yeah.
So there's all of these different seasons of Voivod that I feel like you guys have talked about. It's been very interesting. I know I've been sitting here almost silent, but me as a Voivod fan, it's been that way for me. I'll be like, oh, there's a new Voivod. And when I was on tour, like with the Toys, every time we were in New York, we'd be able to, y'all can raid the closet. And we'd go in and, get CDs and whatever. And we'd be, all right, this will set me up for 6 months,
Yeah.
And I can't remember which, it would have been, the record, and it might have been Nothing Face. And I was just like, because it was early 90s. And I was like, what the fuck is this? And happy in the way that, like, these guys can do whatever they want. And
no, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. No, it's all good.
Well, that's the thing about them, right? I mean, they set themselves up to do whatever they want. I mean, and I think that Slayer didn't necessarily do that. They kind of, they evolved. Show No Mercy is a bit different than Seasons in the Abyss, for instance. But like, I feel like Voivod sort of, massaged their audience a little bit, kind of in the way that Rush did, like where we are expecting a different album each time.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like the Slayer crowd wants Slayer every time. They don't want too much progression, So it's exactly what you're saying. Like, they keep us on our toes, and I think they're for fans like us who want some new avenue or some new door to open with each endeavor. It's just, that's what makes it exciting for me. And I love my Motorhead, I love my Slayer and all that, but like my main interest is bands who just keep challenging me with every new album. I love that, and so it's no wonder Voivod is a favorite of mine. They've never really made a lateral move. There's always something new.
Right.
Yeah.
What I wasn't clear on something. They did one record for Metal Blade, and then they were on Noise for like 3 albums.
Right.
And then MCA came along. But I wasn't real clear. The Metal Blade thing was explained fairly well, but I didn't understand the sudden disassociation with Noise records leading into MCA. What happened there? What was the breakdown?
Well, Nothing Face was on Noise. So the 4th album, it was the 4th Noise album, Nothing Face, over in Europe. But over in the States, right, it was MCA/Mechanic. And Mechanic was sort of this subdivision of MCA, who was taking on, I think they put out the first Dream Theater. Bang Tango, right, if you remember them.
That's right.
A couple others. I want to say Violence.
Yeah.
Eternal Nightmare.
Yeah.
But so the contract was simply up with Noise in the States, the 3 albums, and they just got a much better offer from MCA. It was simply that. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to stay with Noise because they've been loyal and we've had really good success with them. It was just more of a jump. And they thought, and the time was kind of right. If you think about the climate in the late 80s, early 90s, like things were really kind of diversifying in metal and hard rock, and it led to what it led to in the 90s. But really, they were on the cusp of there was that tour in 1990 with Faith No More and Soundgarden. I think it was the right time for them to jump to a major. And it's pretty wild that an album as challenging and weird as Nothing Face came out on a major. and got that kind of push, but it did. And I just think they saw their future at Mechanic. And I'm not going to say it didn't work out in the end. I think they put out 3 really great albums on Mechanic. It's just that I think Voivod were always, I think you alluded to it earlier, Dave, just always a little too weird to really break through, because the people that might have glommed onto them for Nothing Face, got really excited about them, might not have wanted Angel Rat. You know, it wasn't Nothing Face Part 2. And that's what the label wanted, actually. That's noted in the Nothing Face, or sorry, the Angel Rat chapter was, you know, the label were kind of like, we'd like you to do another one just like that. And they're like, that's not what we do.
That's what labels always do, right?
Yeah, sure. You get success. Of course. Yeah.
Repeat the formula, please. Yeah.
Right.
You mentioned Violence, and in the book you talk about the Dimension tour with Violence as the opening act. I saw that tour in San Antonio, and I've told people this numerous times. That was my very first stage dive.
Oh, nice.
Good for you.
That was a wild crowd. That was my first time seeing Voivod on that tour. It was in Milwaukee, but it was Violence opening.
Yeah.
And I remember that crowd being absolutely nutso.
Well, Voivod
that's a good bill. That's a good bill.
Yeah.
I saw them in San Antonio, and they were at a club. Jason, you'll remember Sneakers, not the later one, but the original location. So it's a relatively small club, and they're an unknown band basically at that point, you know. San Antonio was a metal town, so they might have had a bigger crowd there than elsewhere, but it was still a pretty, you know, sparsely attended show, and I can't remember. For all I know, it was on a Tuesday night or whatever, but I do remember going, and I do remember I got on stage with Blackie because he was my favorite one, and I did my first stage dive at a Voivod show.
Nice. You didn't get hurt or anything?
Nah.
Good.
Well, it's bad. It's badass and adorable at the same time, Dave.
Yeah, and I saw the Soundgarden tour as well. So
that was fantastic. Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like we could be talking about Pink Floyd. You know, you talk about Sid Barrett years, and then look where they end up. That trajectory is amazing. And once they found some kind of foothold, and then it just exploded with the Wall. And where could they have gone after that? You know, it's kind of like they could have. I mean, they own the keys to the universe at that point. They could have made any kind of record they wanted anyway. Yeah. Kind of like the Beatles, you know, when they finally had arrived, they could have made it, and they did. I mean, they broke up, but then they just all went solo. So it was kind of like this extension of, you know, I feel like Voivod is kind of the same type of artist that could, I don't want them to break up, but what I'm saying is each of them collectively could make music that would be Voivod-ish and creative in the same colors and things that they use when they were actually called, you know, in Voivod together. I feel like it's no different than, you know, what members of Pink Floyd and Beatles have done.
That's a really good point, because each of them carries a very similar weight. Even the latest lineup with Rocky and Chewy, like, those guys carry their own weight. They're not replacements. They are true Voivodians. And I wish they'd do something like Kiss did in '78, stay a band but like release solo albums. Like, well, why not? You know,
could be really cool.
That would be really cool. Yeah. You know, but who knows? I don't know that record company budgets allow for such a thing anymore.
No. And also the other thing that's interesting to me is, you know, Dave asked the question, you know, and you were right there with him about why it didn't translate, why they didn't actually break through, even though they were sort of, I don't want to call it changing with the times, because in Voivod speak, there is no time.
Right.
They just do they just go where they want to go. I mean, they're like, they have a new block of clay every time they turn around. So
absolutely.
Yeah. I feel like if you had some kind of career, some type of success by in Slayer, it would have been Rain and Blood. Once they had arrived then, and Seasons of the Abyss was MTV, and then it just went, and next thing you know, they were opening for Judas Priest and Ozzy and shit like that, and it was, much like the Anthraxes and the Metallicas were happening around the same time. You know what I mean? Like Slayer kind of broke when Anthrax and, 86 was a big year. For metal, it was a really big year.
Yeah, those majors were starting to sign thrash bands.
That's right. Even the Big Four. You could just say the Big Four. In '86, that was when the Big Four sort of had arrived, and it was on like Genghis Khan. And so I feel like 87, 88, 89, they just got bigger and they were sustaining something, and their fan base was only growing. It was not it wasn't like a fad or like a one-hit wonder. It was like really sustaining. And back to Slayer, it stays, and Slayer fans are forever. Like I said, hey, what kind of music you like? Slayer. Oh, like, what do you like? Pantera? I like Slayer. It's kind of a real thing. It's like some Voivod fans would actually react the same way, I think.
I think so. Yeah. Well, man, I firsthand experience, and I'm one of them. But like some Voivod fans are just nuts, man. Like I'm not one of these record collectors that like collects different variants of records.
Right. Yeah.
I have a few Voivod records that I did that with. I say did because I lost a bunch in the fire, but like, where. Like I don't need a fourth copy of Angel Rat, but it's on purple vinyl and it's been remastered. Like I just want an excuse to buy it again because it feels so good to buy Angel Rat,
Sure.
But I just find them to be very collectible. I think part of it's the artwork package. They're a world builder. It's not just the music. It's like they come with their own artwork and their own just weird way of doing things, and it is a world building experience, and it is a place that we go as fans to access this thing that we can't get from any other band, and so I find them to be very collectible. I've got, I had cassettes that I haven't had a cassette player for 30 years, but I wanted all the Voivod cassettes, and I don't know. There's something really collectible about them that make people like me who aren't collectors as much as we are just fans, but it made me. I collect the shit out of Voivod. I mean, it's just.
Well, I think part of their appeal is, even though they've been around as long as they have, and they've, gained a certain level of success, there's still a lot of, there's still a certain amount of mystery about them. They're still very cliquish and nerdy, and not because they're trying to, and not because they won't welcome a new fan base, but they're still in a lot of ways a very underground cult-like band. So they are very collectible to people like us, and they haven't, which is another reason why your book is so great. They're one of those bands that hasn't been overexposed to the point of burnout.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
And the cassettes, getting all the Voivod records on cassette sounds just like a Pokemon card addiction.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is kind of like, check it out. Do you have this one? Well, look, here's all my cassettes, and it's, whatever. Yeah. How many albums does Voivod actually have out?
Boy, top of my head, if I'm talking just studio, I think 16.
Okay.
And then you have
that's a lot of cassettes, dude.
I know.
That's a mountain.
That's new ones in cassette, as far as I know. But
that's a mountain of cassettes.
I know. Got them in all three formats, man.
I know you're just wrapping up. By the way, where can people buy this book? Is it available now, or are you taking pre-order?
I'll be sending it out in about 10 days. So it's funny because we're moving yet again. We're finally going to have some stability, but we're in the middle of a weeks-long move to a house that we're going to stay at until our new house is built. So it's terrible timing to put out a book, but I'm making it work. And in about 10 days, they arrive from the printer, and I do everything. So I'm just like printing labels, stuff in packages, and getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pre-orders out. So it's available for pre-order now, but it won't be long, and the real thing will be ready to roll. It's at radicalresearch.org/Voivod.
Okay.
Right now, I'm the only place you can get it. I kind of wanted to kind of keep it under my roof for the initial period because I worked really hard on it. It's my investment, time and money wise, and I think there will be some distributors that are going to have it. In fact, I know there will be throughout the U.S. and Europe after it's released. But that's just kind of the way I'm designing it now.
Yeah,
so.
you need it.
I know that's been frustrating for some people, but that's just the way it is.
Well, getting away to maybe licensing later, have it printed overseas so that you can sell it overseas, and then you just get your cut. Let's really hope that kind of a thing happens, because the shipping is gonna kill the fan that's from overseas trying to buy it from you.
Well, I've already dealt with that. Here's the thing: I did look for printers over there, and I'm really particular about my materials and how my books look. I mean, I'm just a little bit hardcore about it because I've been lucky enough to have 3 previous books that looked and felt exactly like I wanted them to. So This one was no different. This one's 540 some pages. It's a little larger than my previous books, and so it's going to be more expensive to print. And what I got from Europe, the European printers I looked at, just too expensive to do over there. It made really no sense for me. And then some of them couldn't do either the paper quality or the cover quality that I wanted. So I walked away from that, and I knew that fans buying from me over there, I should say fans over there in Europe buying from me or Australia or Japan, I've had orders from everywhere, they are going to have to pay quite a bit for shipping, because shipping internationally, as you all know, has gotten insane for
it's nuts.
A heavy item like this, right?
Yeah.
So, but there have been plenty of people that are just like, I want it, I'm going to buy it. And I don't make any money on the shipping,
Right.
But they're certainly buying it, and I will get it into a European distributor's hands after the big hubbub kind of dies down a little bit and make it more affordable for people. So I hope they understand.
Good.
Me,
go ahead.
For me, it was just a question of quality, and could I get them the book that I want to have out there? And the only way to do it was with the printer that I use in Michigan right now.
Yeah, it's a similar conversation we have with Martin Popoff. That he wears it on his sleeve, man. He posts about it all the time. He'll make little videos of, look, see all these boxes, and he's opening the boxes, and he's just living in boxes. He's doing it himself too, which I thought was ballsy.
It's a lot of work. And Martin knows for sure, and I know now too, having done the last 2. But I wanted to take over my books because I just love being a part of every single aspect. There's something about it where I just feel like, and it's not a control thing so much as it is, I know what I want.
Yeah.
I really know, because I'm putting the book out that I want as a fan on the shelf. I want to see that book. And that's why I like doing these things myself. But it's a lot more work. You're stuffing envelopes, you're running labels, you're dealing with the sort of tech headaches that come with all that.
I know all about it.
Ultimately, it's kind of cool. Like I can see it. Oh, somebody from Australia, somebody from Japan, somebody from 10 miles down the road in North Carolina. I don't know this person, but they're ordering my book. Cool.
Do they ask you to sign it sometimes?
Yeah, all the time.
Nice.
Which I'm humbled to do, and that's cool. I offered the pre-order with a signed book, so as soon as they come, I'm going to have to sit there and take a few hours to sign them in a Voivod green pen. Yeah.
It's the DIY thing, and it's like we have all arrived. The thing is when you get like a big deal, and there's a bag of money, and you get wined and dined and all that shit, it's really only when the work has just begun. But those times can be fleeting, and the money runs out, and then the wind blows the trends somewhere else, and some of your fans fall away, and you always go back to DIY. We all know that.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of that happened during COVID, and it woke a lot of that type of mentality up with a lot of artists. And I'm talking any kind of art, not songwriting. Yeah, every kind of art. So.
Well, it's also interesting to see that, and this is because of the music business having gone the way it's gone because of streaming or whatever, but like bands like even Pearl Jam and Radiohead, the big ones, in a sense, they're more DIY than they were when they started and became platinum sellers, because they're now big enough to take control and have it under the roof and then license it out. That's very smart. And so I like that artists are getting a little more control over their music, over their publishing. it's, granted, you're not selling as much just because of streaming and all that, but at least there's more ownership on the part of the artist.
Less middlemen.
Yeah.
Less middlemen.
And quality control as well.
Yeah.
So, real quick, one last time, it's radicalresearch.com/voivod. Is that
radicalresearch.org/voivod. When I started the podcast in 2017 or whatever it was, the radicalresearch.com was one of those URLs that was bought by somebody looking for somebody to come along and buy it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't want to pay the price they were asking for the .com, so I just went with the .org. Screw it.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's where they can get it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Listen, man, congratulations. I'm so excited about this book. I've been reading it voraciously since it landed in my inbox, and I look forward to having a hard copy. I'm going to buy it, and you just do fantastic work, man. And your subject matter is always interesting, and you tell the stories well. So all you Voivod nerds out there, do yourself a favor, buy this book. It's called Always Moving, The Strange Multiverse of Voivod, and it's by Jeff Wagner, our guest today. Man, it's so good to see you. I'm glad you're on the rebound from that fire. I'm so sorry about your loss. I mean, I can't even imagine. The past year has been one of recovery and healing and just a lot of headaches. So it's good to see you.
Bored. That's for sure.
I'm sure you haven't. But hopefully this book will bring you some joy. I know it's bringing readers joy, and we look forward to it. We congratulate you on another.
Thank you. It's good to finally have it out. I was delayed by a year because of the big F word. But thanks, Dave. Thanks, Jason. You guys are amazing. Appreciate you guys.
On behalf of my co-host Jason McMaster, I'm Metal Dave, along with our special guest today, Jeff Wagner on the Talk Louder podcast.
Thanks, dude.